I never thought I'd be the kind of man who would end up telling his story on the internet. But I guess life has a way of humbling you in ways you never expect. My name's Mark. And for most of my adult life, I believed I was one of the lucky ones. I had a stable career in the army, a wife I loved more than anything, and a life that two outsiders probably looked picked. I met Emily when I was 24 and stationed in North Carolina. She was smart, beautiful, and had that calm warmth that made everyone around her feel safe. I was shy at first, but she was the kind of woman who made you want to be brave. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, and by the time we got married, I was sure she was my forever. We had our ups and downs, like every couple, but she was always supportive of my career. She'd tell me how proud she was of me, how strong I was for serving my country, and how she'd wait no matter how long my deployments lasted. And I believed her every single word. When I was deployed to Iraq, for what was supposed to be a 9-month mission, Emily cried at the airport. She hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat pounding against my chest. She whispered, "Come home to me, okay?" And I promised I would. That moment replayed in my mind every night overseas, through sandstorms, long patrols, and sleepless nights. Her voice kept me grounded. I even kept a photo of us from our wedding tucked in my pocket, the corners worn out from all the times I'd taken it out, just to look at her face. The first few months went smoothly. She'd text me every morning, send me pictures of our dog, and tell me about her days. She was working part-time as a teacher and had joined a fitness club to keep busy. I was proud of her. Sometimes, during video calls, I'd catch her glancing at her phone a bit too often, but I chalked it up to her chatting with friends. You don't want to start questioning the person you trust most in the world. But around the 5th month, something changed. The calls got shorter. Her tone became distant. Her messages fewer. I'd text her, "Good morning, beautiful," and she wouldn't respond for hours. Sometimes, not at all. When she did, she'd just say, "Sorry, I was busy." I wanted to believe her, but something inside me started to itch. That gut feeling every soldier learns to trust in the field. It started whispering that something wasn't right at home. One night, after a long mission, I finally got Wi-Fi and decided to surprise her with a call. When she picked up, she looked startled, like she didn't expect me to call. Her hair was messy, and she was wearing a robe I'd never seen before. I asked her if everything was okay, and she smiled a little too fast. "Yeah, just got out of the shower," she said. But there was movement behind her. A shadow. It flashed across the screen for just a second. My heart froze. I asked her who was there. She laughed it off, saying, "Oh, that's just the TV." But I knew. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. For the next few weeks, I tried to push the thought away. You can't exactly hire a private investigator from halfway across the world. I told myself I was paranoid. That deployment stress was messing with my mind. But then I noticed something strange on her social media. She'd started posting gym selfies, something she never did before. And in one of them, I recognized the background. It was our friend Jason's gym. Jason, my best friend since basic training. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, but the unease grew like a thorn in my chest. Finally, one night, I couldn't take it anymore. I messaged one of our mutual friends back home, Sarah. She was close to Emily, but also respected me. I just asked casually, "Hey, have you seen Emily around? How's she doing?" There was a long pause before Sarah replied. Then she wrote something that changed everything. "Mark, I don't know how to tell you this, but she's been spending a lot of time with Jason lately. People are starting to talk." My hand shook as I read those words. I felt sick, like the ground had fallen away under me. I didn't want to believe it. I asked for proof, but Sarah said she didn't want to get in the middle of it. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying memories in my head, our wedding vows, her promise at the airport, the laughter we shared. Was it all a lie? A week later, one of my squad mates handed me a tablet. "Hey man, you might want to see this." It was a Facebook post, a group photo from Jason's gym barbecue, and there she was. My wife, sitting beside him, wearing his baseball cap, smiling like she used to smile at me. His arm was around her. I stared at that image for what felt like hours. My brothers in arms. Could tell something was wrong, but I didn't want to talk. I felt hollow. Betrayal burns in a way nothing else can. You can be shot at, bombed, starved, and still find a way to survive. But when the person you love most destroys your trust, it's like dying from the inside out. When my deployment ended 2 months later, I came home early. I didn't tell her. I wanted to see for myself. I'll never forget that moment. I parked a block away, heart pounding, and walked up to our front door. There were 2 wine glasses on the porch table, a man's jacket draped over the chair. I could hear music from inside our song of all things, Fall of Me, by John Legend. I unlocked the door quietly and stepped inside. The house smelled like her, perfume mixed with something unfamiliar, aftershave that wasn't mine. I moved through the hallway like I was clearing a building, quiet, methodical, every nerve on edge. The bedroom door was half open. I could hear laughter, muffled voices. Then I pushed it open. There she was, my wife, in bed, with Jason. Time stopped. For a second, nobody moved. Then Emily gasped, covering herself with the blanket. Jason froze, his face pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. I remember my voice coming out eerily calm. "Don't stop on my account." Emily started crying, saying, "Mark, I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The truth was right in front of me. My best friend, my wife, to people I'd trusted with my life. I walked out before I did something I'd regret. I remember stepping outside, breathing hard, trying not to collapse. The neighbors must have heard the shouting that followed, but I didn't care. I slept in my truck that night, gripping my wedding ring until it cut into my palm. The next morning, I packed my bags and left. But revenge had already started to take root in my mind. Not the kind of revenge you see in movies, but the slow, quiet kind that eats away at you until it becomes the only thing that keeps you going. For days after walking out of that house, I felt like a ghost drifting through my own life. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town and just sat there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so fast. I wanted to scream, to break something, but mostly, I just felt empty. The woman I had loved, the friend I would have died for, they had both chosen to destroy me. I thought about confronting them again, but what was the point? I already knew the truth. What I didn't know was why. The more I replayed everything, the clearer it became. Hadn't just made a mistake. They had built an entire secret life while I was overseas, fighting for mine. Every text she ignored, every excuse she made, every photo she posted, it was all leading to that moment. The military trains you to stay calm. Under pressure, you learn to think, not react. So that's what I did. I stopped calling her. I stopped messaging anyone. I let her think I was broken and out of the picture. That silence gave me time to plan. First, I called my commanding officer and requested temporary leave. Under the pretext of personal reintegration, he approved it without hesitation. I had 3 weeks before I needed to report back. I used that time to quietly get my affairs in order. I visited our bank. Every account was joint, except the one where my deployment bonuses went. I withdrew the balance, every last cent of it. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then I called a lawyer. Divorce laws in North Carolina are straightforward. If you can prove adultery. I showed him the photos, the social media posts, and the video call screenshots. He didn't need convincing. "You've got her cold," he said. He filed the papers the same day. I made sure she was served while she was at work. I wanted her to feel that gut punch in front of everyone. According to my lawyer, she broke down in tears when she saw the documents. Part of me pitied her, but that pity vanished the moment I remembered the look on Jason's face when I opened that bedroom door. Jason tried to contact me a few times. I ignored him. Then he sent a long text saying he never meant for it to happen, and that feelings just developed. I laughed out loud when I read that. Feelings, like falling into my wife's bed, was an accident of gravity. I blocked his number and decided that if he wanted to play house with her, he could take on all her debts too. See, Emily had a habit of using my credit card for everything. Vacations, online shopping, even her gym membership. I quietly called the bank and disputed the charges made after my deployment. Fraudulent activity, I said. The bank reversed most of them. The next month, she was the one getting the late payment calls. I also canceled her car insurance, which was under my name. The car itself was leased through me as well. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the leasing company saying the vehicle had been repossessed. I told them I had no idea what happened. I didn't stop there. I packed up everything from our house that I'd bought before marriage, my tools, electronics, even the couch hand, put them in storage. The house was in my name, but during deployment, she had convinced me to let her manage the bills. Big mistake. She'd fallen 3 months behind on payments. When she realized I'd frozen the joint account, she called me from a new number, sobbing. "Mark, please, can we talk?" she said. Her voice cracked, the way it used to when she'd apologize after a fight. "There's nothing left to talk about," I said. "You made your choice. It was a mistake," she cried. "Jason means nothing. I was lonely. I thought you'd changed." "You thought wrong," I cut in. "And now you get to live with that." Then I hung up. A few days later, one of my buddies from the base called to tell me Jason had been discharged for misconduct. Apparently someone had anonymously reported that he'd been running a side business during service hours. The evidence was solid. Screenshots, emails, even a paper trail. No one ever found out who sent that information in. Let's just say I had plenty of time and access to a few useful contacts. By the time the divorce hearing came around, Emily looked nothing like the confident woman I used to know. Her eyes were hollow, her voice shaky. She tried to tell the judge that our marriage had been emotionally broken long before I left. But my lawyer tore her story apart. The proof of adultery was undeniable. The judge awarded me the house and denied her spousal support. When the hearing ended, she chased me out into the hallway. "Please, Mark," she said, grabbing my arm. "I made a mistake. I miss you." I looked at her hand on my sleeve, the same hand that had touched my best friend, and felt nothing. "You didn't miss me," I said quietly. "You missed what I gave you." She started crying, begging me to forgive her. People were staring, but I didn't care. I pulled my arm free and walked away. About a year later, I ran into Sarah, the same friend who'd first warned me. She looked uncomfortable at first, but then she said, "You probably don't want to hear this, but Emily and Jason broke up." I shrugged. "I'm not surprised." Sarah lowered her voice. "Apparently, he cheated on her with one of the girls at the gym. She found out and went ballistic. He moved out, and she lost her job a few months later." For the first time in a long while, I smiled. Not because I was happy they were miserable, but because karma had handled the rest for me. I didn't need to lift another finger. Still, the pain didn't disappear overnight. There were nights I'd wake up from dreams where everything was still fine, where she was still mine. Then I'd remember the truth, and it would hit me all over again. But each time the ache was a little smaller. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, drinking a beer and watching the sunset. The air was warm, and for once, my head felt clear. That's when I realized revenge hadn't really been about hurting hurt, had been about taking back control, about not letting the betrayal define me. A few months later, I started dating again. Her name was Clairekind, grounded, nothing like Emily. When I told her what had happened, she just held my hand and said, "You didn't deserve that." Simple words, but they meant more than any apology Emily could have given. Every now and then, I still get messages from old acquaintances who ask if I've talked to Emily. I haven't. I heard she moved back in with her parents and spends most of her time trying to find herself. Wish her luck, I guess. People like her spend their lives chasing something they can never keep: excitement, validation. The problem is, they burn everyone around them in the process. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled things. Some people say revenge doesn't heal you, but in my case, it gave me closure. I didn't hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. I just made sure the truth came out, and the consequences followed. The last time I saw Emily was almost 2 years after the divorce. I was in a grocery store on base, grabbing a few things before heading home. I turned down an aisle, and there she was, thinner, older eyes, tired. She froze when she saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. "Hi, Mark," she said softly. "Hey," I replied. She looked like she wanted to say more, but I could tell she didn't know how. I gave her a small nod and walked past. That was it. No drama, no tears. Just two people who used to love each other, standing in the wreckage of what they'd destroyed. When I walked out of that store, I felt lighter than I had in years, because in that moment, I realized the real revenge wasn't the money, the house, or the humiliation. It was peace. The kind she'd never have again. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove off into the fading light. The radio was playing All of Me, the same song that once haunted me. But this time, I didn't turn it off. I just smiled, rolled the windows down, and let it play.